So let's do first degree burns first. These are probably the simplest ones to make. As you will see, I'm going to do a very kind of simple sunburn. So all I'm using is some grease paints. I'm using the Cryolan Burn and Injury grease paint palette there, which has got some ideal colours in it. I've got a wee palette so I can scoop my product out. I've got a sponge, a brush and a spatula. So I am going to go in and I'm going to create a line as if I've kind of been wearing a Fitbit or a bangle or a watch. That gives a good kind of reference and it bounces off the paleness of the skin, so it shows the intensity of the sunburn. Now this looks really quite red at first, but don't worry, we will blend it out. So using the brush to get my straight line, I'm just going to carry on bringing the red down the hand. For this to look realistic, I'm going to have to take the red all the way down to the tips of my fingers as if I've been sitting out in the sun. And I have burnt my whole entire arm. So now I'm going to go around the other side and I'm just going to do exactly the same, using the brush and the same grease paint. I'm just going to draw a nice straight line to create that strap mark, and again just buff the red further up the arm. Now, if you feel your red still a bit too intense, just go in with a little tissue or wipe and just dab off any excess and you'll get a kind of softer look. Now these are grease paints, so they will need to be set. I have a translucent powder, so I'm just popping some on top of that all over and then just buffing off any excess. Also, a little pro tip here is just taking any excess off my nails, because that would just look fake. And there you go. I have got quite a sore looking sunburnt arm. So moving on to second degree burns. These are a bit gross. So you'll see I'm using a couple of different products here that we've never used before. I have got some paints, some bruise paints in red and yellow. I've also got a palette, I've got some gelatin, I've got a sponge, and I have got some powder. So using the paints on my finger, I'm just going to buff that into the skin, creating a kind of light shade of red underneath. Their paints are not too dissimilar from your bruise gels. They're kind of like a mixture between your grease paint and your bruise gels in texture and consistency. So once I've got my red on, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of yellow in there, because I will be adding a couple of blisters on and it's quite nice to have a slight yellow tone coming through the gelatin. So gelatin's a great product. You need to heat it first in a water bath or in a microwave, and then you can almost just pour it onto the skin. Ideally you would pop it onto a palette, but this wee one here has got a nice wee nozzle on it, so I could just basically place it on to the blisters that I would like to create. So you can see I've got a couple on there already, because I didn't film that bit, and I'm just applying a little couple more, using my spatula to kind of blend it out before it sets. Normally within a minute it'll set in place. So you've got about a minute before it sets. In that time you can move the product about and create the shape that you want to have. Once your gelatin's dry to touch, you can then just set it with a bit of powder. To make this a little bit more realistic, I'm just going to go back in with my grease paints here, and I'm just going to add some more red, some yellow, some different colours here, just to add a different dimension to the burn. scoop out a bit of Vaseline, and then you can start kind of painting that on. That's just going to give that kind of wet, shiny look that the burn will have. And there we go, pretty gross bubble blistered burn, which is really simple to remove. You just basically pick it off and it'll come off in big blisters without harming the skin. So, 3rd degree burn, see, even more gross. So for this one I've decided to use some latex. I've got some alcohol activated paints, obviously got alcohol, I have got some powder, some pus, some Vaseline, some latex, tweezers and some old brushes. So with this sponge I'm just going to layer on a light layer of latex over the hand. We know that latex will dry clear, and then we can kind of peel it off the skin, hopefully to create some blistered effects. So once the first layer of latex is dry, I'm just going to add one more layer there. Not quite as much as I did previously, and this is not necessary. You could get away with just doing it with one layer if you wanted to. So once your second layer of latex is touch dry, if you grab a little pair of tweezers or scissors, just something with a kind of sharp, jaggy, pointy bit, and then you can start kind of picking up the latex to create those blisters. So my blisters kind of made one big giant blister, so I decided to go back in with a little bit of latex and just create blisters within the big blister. So once I'm happy, I'm just going to set it with a bit of powder. Take away that kind of shiny look from the latex, give it a bit more of a natural kind of skin look. So we've used kind of crease paints products, so I'm going to use an alcohol activated paint for here. As you can see, I've kind of dipped my brush in alcohol, and I'm now just painting it on a kind of reddy colour onto the skin. I've used a lot of alcohol, so the colour's quite sheer. And I'll just gradually build it up as I go. I'm now going to go in with a bit of yellow, and I'm just going to add that around the edges of the blisters. I want to make a charred effect on the skin, so I'm going in with the black alcohol activated paints, and I'm just going around the edges of the burn, adding that a little bit of texture there. Now, if I had a stipple sponge, this would be so much easier. Oh hey, I found one! So yeah, just the same process, got some black paint on there, using my stipple sponge, I'm just going around the edge. Stipple sponge will give me a lot of texture without having to use my brush too much. Hope you're not squeamish. And now I'm going to add a little bit of fake pus into those blisters. Now it's like a gel-based product. When it heats up on the skin, it kind of all melts and gives a really nice kind of pussy effect. So the skin blisters will look like they're oozing. So once we're happy with our pus, let's add a little bit of Vaseline or oil, and there we go, pretty gross 3rd degree burn.